The day began like any other, quiet, predictable, safe. I brewed my morning coffee, the scent of roasted beans curling through the kitchen, while Robert hummed an old tune from his chair by the window. At 62, our lives had settled into a rhythm of comfort and small joys. We weren't wealthy, but we had enough. And our only son, Ethan, was our greatest pride. He'd always been a gentle boy, polite, intelligent, and kind. When he brought home Mia 5 years ago, I thought my world had expanded. She was beautiful and quick-witted, with the kind of grace that drew people in. Everyone adored her, and I wanted to. God knows I did. But there were moments, tiny fractures beneath her perfect smile, that unsettled me. A flash of irritation when she thought no one was watching, a whispered phone call that fell silent as I entered the room. I told myself I was being paranoid. Every mother fears losing her son's affection, especially to another woman. So I silenced the unease and called it love. That Tuesday morning, Mia arrived unannounced, holding her phone like a wounded bird. "Linda, could you take this to get repaired?" she asked, offering a sheepish smile. It slipped into the sink. "I've already tried the rice trick, but it's still dead." I hesitated. "Can't Ethan do it?" "He's busy at work," she replied quickly, almost too quickly. Then softening, she added, "You always go into town on Tuesdays. It'd be such a help." I took the phone, feeling its cold weight in my hand. Harmless. Ordinary. "All right," I said. "I'll drop it off." She exhaled in relief. "You're the best, Linda." Her tone was syrup-sweet, and before I could say anything more, she was gone. Heels clicking down the path, sunlight glinting off her hair. For the rest of the morning, her phone sat on the counter beside my coffee cup, lifeless and still. I almost forgot about it until I left for town. The repair shop was small and cluttered, tucked between a laundromat and a florist. The air smelled of dust and old circuits. Ryan, the young technician, greeted me with his usual friendly nod. "Back again, Mrs. Collins?" "Not for me this time," I said, placing the phone on the counter. "It's my daughter-in-law's, just water damage." He nodded, took it apart carefully, and began checking the internals. I watched absently, already thinking about groceries and errands. But then his movement slowed. His brows furrowed. "Ma'am," he said, voice tightening, "can you tell me again whose phone this is?" I frowned. "My daughter-in-law's. Why?" He hesitated, eyes flicking to the screen. "Because you might want to see this." Something cold prickled at the back of my neck. I stepped closer, and that's when I saw the first message, and felt the ground shift beneath me. The screen glowed faintly in Ryan's hand, its cracked surface flickering like a heartbeat. Rows of messages filled the display, some months old, some only hours. My name appeared in them over and over. "Mia. She's taking the bait." I told her to bring the phone in. "Ethan. Good. Keep her calm. We need everything to look natural." "Mia. Once it's done, we'll be free. 2 million and no more pretending." My breath hitched. My eyes darted to the sender name again. "Ethan. My son. My only child. No," I whispered. "This has to be some kind of mistake." Ryan's face was pale. "Mrs. Collins, I shouldn't be showing you this, but there are dozens of messages like that. And look, attachments." He opened a photo. An image of our house, the insurance papers on the kitchen table. Then another, our life insurance policy, circled and annotated. In the margin, a note, "Claim accessible after both are gone." The room tilted. My fingers dug into the counter just to keep from falling. "Are you sure no one's hacked this?" I asked, clinging to a shred of disbelief. "I checked," Ryan said. "These are direct messages. Same device, same account. Whoever owns this phone sent them." For a long moment, the shop was silent, except for the hum of the fluorescent light. I could hear my own heartbeat, heavy and uneven. I thought of Ethan as a child, his tiny hand gripping mine on his first day of school, the way he'd cry if I wasn't there to tuck him in. The boy who used to leave me notes that said, "Love you, Mom." Could that boy really grow into the man who plotted my death? "Ma'am," Ryan said gently, "if I were you, I'd cancel every bank card and contact the police. Tonight." I nodded numbly, taking photos of the messages with trembling hands. I thanked him, though my voice didn't sound like my own. Outside, the sunlight seemed cruelly bright. Cars passed. Children laughed near the park. The world was still turning, even as mine had stopped. Driving home, I replayed every interaction with Ethan and Mia over the past few months. The casual dinners, the sudden interest in our finances, the way they'd suggested we take some time off at a cabin up north. At the time, I thought it was kindness. Now I saw it for what it was, a setup. When I pulled into the driveway, Robert was trimming the hedges. He smiled when he saw me waving the shears. I couldn't bring myself to wave back. "Linda?" he called. "You okay?" I forced a nod. Just tired. But my mind was already elsewhere. On the messages, on the lies, on the horrifying question I could no longer ignore. What do you do when the people you love most start planning your death? I drove home with my fingers clenched around the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. Every corner I turned, every stoplight I passed, felt like stepping deeper into a nightmare I couldn't wake from. My mind replayed the words from Mia's phone. "Once it's done, we'll be free." Free from what? From us? When I pulled into the driveway, Robert was waiting on the porch, wiping his hands on an old towel. The sight of him, gentle, trusting, unsuspecting, nearly broke me. I forced a smile and walked inside, my heart pounding so loudly I could barely hear my own thoughts. That evening, we sat at the dinner table as always. The roast chicken filled the air with its usual comfort, but I couldn't taste a thing. Mia and Ethan joined us later, laughing about something trivial, a work party, a joke I didn't understand. Ethan kissed my cheek. "You okay, Mom? You look pale." "I'm fine," I lied. "Just tired." He smiled. That same warm, familiar smile that used to make my heart swell with pride. Now it chilled me. I looked at my son and saw a stranger wearing his face. As they ate, I studied them carefully. The way Mia glanced at him for silent approval. The way he nodded ever so slightly. A private code, right there at my table. I felt sick. After dinner, when they left for the night, I finally told Robert everything. He listened in silence, his expression unreadable. When I finished, he pushed his plate away and leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly. "You're sure?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I saw the messages, photos, insurance documents. Our names, Robert rubbed his temples. No, Ethan wouldn't. He couldn't. I reached across the table, placing my trembling hand over his. He did. The clock ticked between us, each second carving away the illusion of the life we thought we had. Finally, he stood and walked to the window, staring into the darkness outside. "We go to the police, quietly, tonight." I nodded, though dread crawled up my spine. The idea of involving the police felt surreal, like dragging our private heartbreak into the public light. But what other choice did we have? As Robert made the call, I sat on the couch, staring at a family photo on the mantel, the three of us, smiling in sunlight. That picture used to bring me joy. Now, it felt like a lie frozen in time. When the officer on the phone told us not to confront them, only to gather proof and wait, I realized what the waiting meant. Pretending, smiling, acting as though I didn't know that the two people I loved most had already begun rehearsing our deaths. And so, I braced myself for the performance of a lifetime. The days that followed felt like walking through glass. Every word, every smile, every shared moment brittle and dangerous. Robert and I lived behind masks, rehearsing normalcy while the truth gnawed at the edges of our sanity. Mia called often, her voice light and practiced. "Are you both still coming to the cabin this weekend?" she'd ask. "We'll handle everything. Just relax. Relax." The word curdled in my stomach. The police had told us to wait, to let them collect evidence quietly. "Don't alarm them," the officer had warned. "The moment they suspect, you could be in danger." So we waited. I cooked dinners I couldn't eat. I answered Mia's texts with fake warmth. And each night, I sat beside Robert, our hands clasped tightly as though physical contact could anchor us to reason. Then, 2 nights before the trip, Ethan came by unexpectedly. He stood in the doorway, smiling, holding a bottle of wine. Thought I'd surprise you guys. Figured we could talk about the weekend plans. My heart clenched. He looked so normal. The boy I'd raised, the son who once built birdhouses with his father in the backyard. But now I saw the faint distance in his eyes, the calculation behind his charm. Robert gestured for him to sit. "We were just watching the news," he said, voice even, though I saw the tension in his jaw. Ethan poured the wine, laughing softly. "You two are always so serious. You'll love the cabin. It's peaceful, private. Perfect getaway, private." The word echoed in my mind like a warning bell. I forced a smile. "It sounds lovely." He studied me for a moment, his gaze too steady, too knowing. "You trust me, right, Mom?" The question pierced through me like a blade. I swallowed hard. "Of course, Ethan, you're my son." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Good. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat by the window, watching the shadows move across the yard. I thought of every moment that had led us here. The love, the sacrifices, the blind devotion that had turned into our greatest weakness. At dawn, my phone buzzed. A message from Detective Harris. "We have enough evidence. Do not leave the house. We'll move in the morning." I exhaled a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. When the police arrived at sunrise, lights flashing softly through the curtains, I stood at the window, heart pounding. Outside, 2 silhouettes emerged from the neighboring house. Ethan and Mia, still half asleep, confusion turning to panic as officers surrounded them. Mia screamed. Ethan shouted something I couldn't hear. Robert turned to me, tears in his eyes. "It's over," he whispered, but it wasn't over. Not really, because as they led my son away, he looked at me, not with guilt, not with shame, but with betrayal. As though I had been the one who'd destroyed him. And that was the moment I realized. I hadn't just lost my son. I'd lost the illusion of who he was. The house is quiet now. Too quiet. The kind of silence that seeps into your bones and lingers long after the shouting stops. Robert spends most mornings by the window, staring out at the garden where he and Ethan once planted marigolds. The flowers still bloom, bright and defiant, as if unaware that the man who sowed them will never walk those paths again. I used to think grief had a sound, a wail, a cry, something loud enough to match the size of the loss. But real grief is quieter. It's the clink of a spoon against an empty cup, the creak of a chair that no longer faces another. Ethan and Mia are gone now. The trial moved quickly. The evidence was overwhelming. Messages, forged documents, even a recorded conversation where they discussed making it look like an accident. The jury didn't take long. When the verdict was read, Ethan didn't look at me. He just sat there, hollow-eyed, staring past everything. I wanted to hate him, but I couldn't. Love doesn't vanish. It mutates. It becomes something sharp and unfamiliar. A wound that keeps its shape. Afterward, people came by with casseroles and condolences. They said the right things. You were brave. You did the right thing. But none of them understood what it means to lose your child while he's still alive. To hear the word son and feel only ache. At night, I walk through the house and stop at the photographs we once took without fear. There's one of Ethan at 8, holding a frog he caught by the pond, grinning with pride. I touch the glass and wonder if there was a moment, one single moment, when the boy in that picture began to fade, replaced by the man who could plan something so monstrous. Robert doesn't talk about it, but I see it in his eyes, the same question that haunts me. Were we blind? Or just too willing to forgive what we didn't want to see? Sometimes I visit the church down the road. I light 2 candles, one for the child we raised, and one for the truth that saved us. I stand there, feeling both grief and gratitude intertwine. Because survival, I've learned, is its own kind of faith. The police officer who handled our case told me once, "You did the hardest thing a parent can do. You chose to live." I didn't understand it then. But I do now. Sometimes the people you raise become strangers. Sometimes love demands that you see the unthinkable before it's too late. And sometimes The bravest thing you can do isn't to fight, but to believe the truth, even when it shatters the heart that once held it.